Howdy, good evening. So I decided to make this video, and it's going to turn into, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 more, for a few different reasons, and I've written those down, and I will put them in the comments here as well, along with pictures of the visual thing that I'm going to show you in a minute. And my goal here is to just provide some of the tools that were most helpful for me in times when I kind of was thrust into a situation for one reason or another and ended up needing to kind of restructure my life and learn how to adapt to whatever the new situation is. And thinking about everything that's going on, I realized that there are quite a few people who have never had to learn those skills. And this is a really huge one where even people with awesome coping skills, are still struggling a bit. Like I'm still struggling a bit. Even though I have years and years of learning how to cope. So I was trying to think of a really kind of concise way to kind of present these ideas. And so I have this illustration that I made because I thought it makes sense. So we will do that now. And it's based off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that is something that it's used a lot in psychology and stress coping and all sorts of things. And there are other ways to look at it. Hi, Christy. There are other ways to kind of view all of the basic human needs, but I think Maslow's hierarchy is probably the most widely used. So it starts with, oh my gosh, I'm shaking. Sorry. Okay. So it starts with your basic needs and functioning. You need air, food, water, sleep, and other bodily functions. And then above that is safety. So it's the security of your body, financial security, security of health, resources, and your family's safety and security. The next one up is social emotional, which is things like friends, family, and intimacy. Esteem is above that with self-image, confidence, and respect. And that's having those boundaries where you respect other people and other people treat you with respect. Now, the top one rung, I call it full potential. A lot of them, they have different kinds of names for it, but it's just basically once all those other needs are met, those higher functioning, really understanding your own morality and living with those ethics and creativity, lack of prejudice, acceptance, and that's acceptance of facts and then problem solving. So the theory, and scientific theory, not guesses, is that to be able to function at this level and accurately solve problems and just be functioning at our highest potential, we have to meet the needs below it. So that means we can't function up here really well if we're not eating right, drinking water, or getting enough sleep. That's why a lot of times when we're stressed and it's harder for us to figure things out, we don't sleep well. I'm trying to find a way to not shake. I'm sorry, guys. Right. So, yes. Now we're going to go to the next one, because for me it's easier to picture all of this if we make it 3D, because it's not linear. And so, boop, sometimes we need to prioritize things differently. So if, say, you lost your job or your house was broken into, your priorities might end up looking like this, where safety and security become super, super important, and it'll squeeze out some of the other things, like they won't matter as much. Like you'll be more focused on taking care of your safety and security. You won't really be as focused on friendships, and you might, like we were talking about over here, you might start to see that you're not sleeping as well. And like other body cues will kind of cue you in to that you're just like you're not practicing self-care as much. So the next part is showing, like, when we struggle and cling, we can't see the full picture and our perspective shifts. So this guy up here, like, this is when we're having a harder time, when we're having like more stress in our life, and maybe we're not really looking clearly at all of the types of needs we have. We're really focusing in on some, and maybe we're neglecting some in different areas and just trying to kind of keep it together. And then sometimes when it feels like we're really hanging on, you can kind of, like, in the picture, he's only able to touch like social, emotional, and physiological. Like he knows those others are there and he's trying to get there, but there's just a lot less control over which of your needs that you can meet when you're struggling, like really struggling. So now, with what's going on now, we're all kind of in the middle of a crisis. And so it's like somebody took that pyramid and threw it in the water. And now all of our needs are just kind of jumbled at the bottom. And as it goes along, like maybe we're really just able to focus on very few things. We can only see those few things. And then it'll get to a point where when you're really, really feeling overwhelmed, sorry. So it says it all gets jumbled and hard to see anything. We do whatever pops up, and then whatever pops up, and things keep popping up, but it feels like nothing gets done. So here it's like he can, barely see what's just in that top corner, and just trying to take care of those things. Like, I've had days like this where it's just, you're trying to solve problems, right? And that's one of our like full potential categories. And so they seem more complicated, and like you take care of whatever comes up. Like, okay, my mom's calling. Okay, I just need to breathe, right? So you're just forced into like just looking at those needs that you can meet that were put like right in front of you. So what do we do, right? So we can slow down and try to get what is important and actionable in focus and keep sight of it as we ride these waves. And my entire life, I haven't found anything other than this to do. And it's hard sometimes, but once you... Am I back? Okay. Once you can really see what it is that you need to focus on and kind of redistribute your priorities, like things start to feel easier and it's not as overwhelming. You can tackle things a little bit at a time. It says it's okay to let some things sink out of focus, because when we reach solid ground, we can reconstruct all of our priorities and needs. So what this kind of means is, at the moment, we're still kind of in the middle of that crisis, and a lot of times through this, I'm going to flip you all around for a minute. Ha! Okay. So, like in the middle of the crisis, we're going to have times where we can't keep ourselves from getting overwhelmed, right? But like the goal here with this information is like we have to look at what those needs are and what the threat to our needs are, and kind of focus in on certain things while we put other things to the side. Like we can't really worry about how we're going to rebuild a business that, we kind of have to take a pause on. Like that's one that's big for me right now. Like I know business is going to suffer, but right now, like I just really can't think about that at all. Like I can't do much about it right now. So I have to set it to the side. We want to remember what's important and actionable. So I'm going to pop you back over here. So right now, of those needs that we were looking at, it's likely that, obviously anytime we're stressed and not meeting all of our other needs, our full potential needs are threatened. Our confidence is probably threatened right now. Social emotional is going to feel threatened, especially with social distancing measures. Our security and safety, I think, are the biggest ones, especially financial security, family security. Like those are the really big things that are making us super anxious. So then down there it says physiological. A lot of us are maybe not eating like we used to, like maybe we're eating more or less. Maybe our sleep is off. So I also put down here sometimes morality, lack of prejudice, and productive problem solving. So I put those down here because in times of really high stress, sometimes we'll act against our general morality. Sometimes we'll start to other people more because we feel threatened. So we see more of a threat in other people. Productive problem solving. When we're high stressed, our executive functioning is impaired, and we're not able to solve problems as constructively. We're not able to use that part of our brain at all sometimes when we get super overwhelmed, which is why it's important to learn these coping skills. So here is focus. Like here are things that, because of those threats, it's a good idea to maybe focus on. The first one is stay motivated, but it's okay to sideline things. So don't lose your motivation for things that you have to put to the side, but know that, maybe we won't have as much time for it right now. Do what you can where you are. So this is kind of next to confidence. And that other one was kind of full potential stuff. So for me, I know that I feel better when if I'm feeling helpless in a situation like this and my confidence is kind of going down, it makes me feel better to check in and see what can I actually do where I am right now. And if I'm doing those things, then I feel better about myself and a bit better about my actions. Now, for social emotional, with the social distancing measures, online connections with friends and family, super important and so much exactly the same as regular friendships. It's hard, it is difficult. There were definitely times when, I was stuck at home with a baby that, it's hard when you can't get out and see people as much when you want to. But it is life-saving to keep up those connections with other people and reach out and help others when they need help or when they need somebody to listen or they need that connection too. So for security and safety, because there's so much unknown there, all we can do right now is make the best choices for ourselves and our families, know what resources there are to help, and we can prepare as much as possible, but we really can't get a good look at like future financial security and stuff until things have settled. And so it's okay to not stress about that too much. So then I put make sure needs are met. Super important. That's where the metaphor about putting your own oxygen mask on an airplane first. It's exactly what it's talking about. So we can't function as well as we usually do if we're not taking care of those needs. I also put acceptance of facts, because even though that's a higher thinking one, or not higher thinking, but it's a full potential one, it's a super important one for everything. And it's, to me, acceptance of facts is not only keeping reasonably informed on what's going on, so that, you know, you have that solid information to make, to make choices and to solve problems better. But it's also acceptance in the sense of like what is important and actionable, right? Like we're going to be looking at so much stuff in the next months, we'll say that months, that we just don't have any control over. And that's tough. It's a tough thing. And accepting it doesn't mean that you're okay with it. Accepting it only means that you're aware that it's happening and that you can't control it. But there's usually things around those topics that we can control. Like we can't control how many people might get sick in our area, but we can contribute to services that are going on to help people. And we can do what we can in our communities to help in other ways. So the last thing, I promise. Up here, these are, I'm going to do more specific like coping strategies and other ones, but these are kind of the basics. So in my house, we always say step number 1 is always to breathe. Always. Because you want to create that space where you're aware of your body and how it's feeling. And physiologically, there's one, I'm going to flip you for a minute again. So there's one breathing thing that I learned, like if you're getting overwhelmed and you feel like, because I think this is super important to know, especially since one of the symptoms of this is shortness of breath. And one of the symptoms of panic attacks is shortness of breath. So what you want to do if you're feeling like your heart is racing and you're breathing too quickly, the way you can stop a panic attack, I've heard of the Marine thing, but this one's different. So if you're breathing really quickly, you want to start with like 2 seconds, and you make your inhale 2 seconds. And then you try to exhale for 4 seconds. And then if you do that one fine, then you move on to 3 seconds and 6 seconds. And what you're doing is by controlling your breathing like that, it actually sends the message to your heart and to like your amygdala in your brain that's sending out those chemicals. It sends that message that you're not in danger. And so it stops the panic attack. And you'll start to breathe normally and your thoughts will slow down. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, do that first. Okay. So then the here and now, and that is something that I literally have tattooed on me because I have to remember it all the time. When you're overwhelmed, just think about what is right here and what is happening right now, and what can I do about this? Me and one of my BFFs, we have the whole bird by bird thing, which means that it's based off of an Anne Lamott book, and you can Google that, and it's an interesting tidbit. But it's basically just bit by bit. You can only do one thing at a time, right? So we have accepting evidence-based information. I have that on here because this is something that we do need to stay informed on, and it's very wise to sign up for local like updates on it. But you also want to limit the amount of information that you're digesting on this, because if you keep reading about all of the specific stories and all of the different places, it's going to get overwhelming. It's because the more you read, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So make sure that you're stepping back when you need to. Basic needs, just daily check that, you know, you're drinking enough water, you're getting enough sleep, you're eating the best you can. Check in with family and friends online. Online is fine, guys. Sorry. And that last one is motivation, and find an outlet for yourself. Even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes a day, keep doing something that is your thing, right? Like I make sure that like I'm drawing every day. Just doing something to feel productive and keep motivated. So those are, like, that's kind of everything that I think I wanted to cover in this. And I hope that, you know, that's helpful. And maybe if, like, the ideas in this kind of make sense to you, if you make your own charts for the things that feel really threatened right now, and then your own chart of specific things that you can do. And in the comments, I'm going to share some graphics of, it's like just different coping skills that I guess they're like curated by me. I found them in a Google image search, but they're ones that make sense to me, and I think that they're helpful ones. And I think I'll probably pop some more stuff in the comments. And the ones that are coming up, I was going to do one about kind of making sense of things when you do, like, with or without a God, because a lot of coping strategies for like understanding trauma and tragedy, a lot of them tie into the idea of a God or religion. And I personally am agnostic, and I know a lot of people struggle with reconciling those things, and I definitely did for a long time. So there's going to be one on that. There's going to be one that's focused on like the here and now and kind of anxiety coping. One specifically about utilizing the internet for the powers of good during this time, and like really making the most and getting social connection and good information, because I lived here for a very long time here on the internet. And I don't remember what the other one is right now. Sorry. But yes, so I hope this was helpful in some way to people. Like I said in the introduction post, it's really so baffling to me that as a society we don't kind of teach these basic coping strategies to everybody. Like, you only get the chance to learn them if you suffer some sort of trauma, or, you know, you need help coping in different ways. But that's not particularly helpful when a society full of people are thrust into an entirely different world one day and need to cope with it. So yeah, I just didn't like the thought of that. So hopefully this was helpful. I love you guys. Stay safe, stay home, stay busy, stay connected, and have a good night.